Okay. So as I said, this is Joanna Regal from KMJ Consulting. And on behalf of the Eastern Transportation Coalition, we welcome you to the TSMO Performance Measures web meeting this morning. We're going to get started. Just a few things. First of all, if you can use a phone line for the audio, you may want to do so. The call-in number was provided on the screen, and it was also available in the email that you received, your confirmation. Participants will be in listen-only mode throughout this web meeting. If you have any questions with audio or the web, you can press *0. Please call Justin at 848-557-7009 if you have any difficulties with the web or audio. That is his cell number. You can also text him there. We wanted to let you know that this web meeting is currently being recorded and that presentations will be posted to the Coalition's website. You, as a participant, will receive a link to those presentations once they are posted along with the Q&A. Since everyone is in listen-only mode at this point, we're going to ask you to use the chat box to ask your questions today. The questions will be monitored and answered at the end of each presentation, and any leftover will also be answered at the end of the meeting. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Denise Marco. She's the TSMO Director for the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Denise?
Thanks, Joanna. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're looking forward to an interesting webinar regarding performance measures. It seems that this topic is always changing, and there are innovative and new methods being employed, so it seems to be a perennial request from our members to hold a webinar about performance measures. So today we're looking to capture 3 different types of presentations, all related to some form of performance measurement. So here's the agenda on the screen. We're going to have Joey Sagal talking from Maryland DOT-SHA about the performance measures in their department. And literally, Joey's going to speak to us about how Maryland has integrated performance measurements into the fabric of their entire department, which is pretty much a role model, I think, for many of our member states. And then basically, I think Maryland's done an A to Z approach of how they live and work in TSMO, and performance measurements is a core pillar. So we're going to hear about that today. And then we're going to have John Allen, who works with the RITIS platform. He's going to talk about the performance measurement reporting templates that they have and are continuing to be developed. And please know that even if you do not use RITIS, I thought it was valuable to see what types of information and metrics are being used, because when I was an administrator at New Hampshire DOT and we did not have access to the platform, I used every opportunity I could to learn what was being done so that I could replicate on my own terms the information I needed. I called it R&D, which was rip off and duplicate, which is, I think, the highest form of flattery. And then John is going to be followed by Tom Edinger of Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, and he's going to show us how performance measurements are used in the RPC for congestion management. So we have 3 different presentations from the group, and then we'll wrap up at the end. And please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat box. So without further ado, let me introduce the 3 speakers, and then I will hand this off in a bit. But Joey Sagal is the first speaker up from Maryland. He's the acting Deputy Administrator for Operations. Maybe he is now the Deputy Administrator. Joey, if you're no longer acting, then I apologize. He's got about 22 years of transportation experience, transportation operations. He leads right now the agency in many of their departments: asset management, construction, homeland security. He also is responsible for materials and technology, traffic safety, mobility operations, and maintenance. So a lot on his plate. So we thank him for joining us today. But before he was at Maryland, he also served as the traffic incident and event specialist at Federal Highways Resource Center. So he really is recognized as a national subject matter expert in traffic incident management. He also is very active in AASHTO. He's a vice chair on the CISO Road and Weather Management Community of Practice Committee. He's a co-chair on their National Highway Automation Task Force, very involved in AASHTO, and he even somehow finds time to remain active in the volunteer fire department, serving as a past chief in the Baltimore County, Maryland. But again, another piece of his traffic incident management background. After Joey, then we're going to talk to John and John is basically he's a liaison and he's an educator at CATT. He originally came from New Jersey DOT, but he really works now and does a lot of work with user experience and user interface development and report development, QC/QA, for the CATT Lab and the RITIS platform. He's also been a facilitator for many of our webinars. He has been involved in partners in using archived operations data. So prior to joining CATT, he was section chief at New Jersey DOT. So he has about 30 years of experience in planning, corridor analysis, and system mobility. So he even helped to develop New Jersey DOT's first performance dashboard concept, and then expedited the development or the creation of their asset management policies. So very, very steeped in planning and asset management background. And then after John, we're going to talk with Tom Edinger. Tom's got about 20 years of combined experience in planning. He's been at the DVRPC, Delaware Valley Regional Planning in Philly, the Tri-County Regional Planning Commission in Harrisburg, Lehigh Valley Planning Commissioner in Allenstown, all in Pennsylvania. He also has a master's degree in city and regional planning from Ohio State. So he has worked at DVRPC. He's responsible for managing their congestion management process program. So we're going to hear a little bit about that with these three speakers. So before I hand this over to Joey, there's about 230 people registered today from 22 different states. I think you can see the variety of agencies that we have, from DOTs all the way over to consultants. So it's very much a mixed blend of participants today. The coalition update, which is the Eastern Transportation Coalition. I always do this before we start, in that just making you all aware of what's going on in our world. But from our recent perspective, June, July, and August, we had our current strategic planning summit, which guides our development of our work plan. We had a great webinar in June on new technologies or emerging technologies and traveler information, anywhere from how New Jersey DOT is using Alexa and Cortana in their 511 to how Florida and the Turnpike system is using digital iHeartRadio to replace their HARs. It was a really good, informative meeting. All of that information is on our website. And then we had our PDA user group meeting in July, which we took a look at some of the prioritization of product development. So it was a meeting that really spent time just on what was needed to do next. Upcoming, however, in the next couple months, we've got a webinar at September 24th on communicating CAV for DOTs, public perception, awareness, and education. There's 4 great speakers that are going to be there. It's on our calendar, on our website, if you want more information. The RITIS user group meeting, we're looking to also be on October 1st. We're looking for some update, I think, from Mass DOT is going to be the spotlight presentation. And then lastly, in November, we haven't done this in a couple of years. We're going to do a roundtable web meeting on what states are doing for 511. So that's kind of what's going on in our world and the coalition. As you know, we formally became the Eastern Transportation Coalition July 1st. We are no longer I-95. We flipped the switch, and that's because we've added members off the corridor. We've got Alabama and Tennessee, and then Vermont has been one of our core members, but it's due time we give them recognition that they're not on 95. So we're called the Eastern Transportation Coalition. Before I start with Joey, too, the other piece of information I think is important. If you might be aware of it, you might not be aware of it, but the FHWA launched a state performance dashboard and reports website. This is the top level of that web page that you see on the left, and the link is at the bottom. And then the bullets on the right are where you can actually drill down into. So you can go to safety measures, infrastructure condition measures. You can look at highway reliability and truck travel time reliability measures. You can get information on emissions reduction measures and congestion measures for urbanized areas if applicable. So this is the high level. Those bullets show up on the top of the bar. You can't really see it too well, but this is, I thought, from a performance measurement standpoint, a website that was really well done and worth making you all aware of if you're not aware of it. So when you clicked on the TSMO, if you clicked on these are the TSMO dashboard features for all states. So you can click on highway safety, you can click on highway infrastructure condition, highway reliability, you can get emissions reductions. This one here, telling the performance story of asset management, performance dashboard, state rate plans, and long-range planning. This is the dashboard, for example, we use South Carolina as a sample. So it's a little difficult to read at times, but the highway safety bucket is in the top left. On the right, there's the infrastructure condition. You've got in the middle it talks to you about highway reliability, truck travel time reliability index, or you've got emission reductions, and then lastly at the bottom is telling the performance story. So again, this is a great website if you're looking for some information from a state perspective. Then when you take, for example, I went to highway safety, and you can even click further. So here, this gives you about the number of fatalities, the fatalities rate per year, the number of severe injuries. So again, I would highly recommend that if you haven't had an opportunity to check this out, check it out for your state. And maybe Joey can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe these are some requirements that are being requested of the state, but it's a great place to find out all that information. Here's a deeper dive on highway reliability in terms of categories of non-interstate highway reliable person miles traveled, interstate highway truck travel time reliability, which has become a big deal, and then 4-year and 2-year targets. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to check that out and take a look at that federal website. I think it's one of the better ones I've seen over the years. So without that being said, I'm going to now turn it over to Joey Sagal, who is going to talk a little bit about TSMO performance measures for transportation decision-making relative to Maryland and how they've really integrated it into the system. So, Joey, take it away.
Thanks, Denise. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you for the kind words, and I love your rip off and duplicate. That's what we do best here. I am no longer officially acting, even though probably for the last 22 years I've been trying to fake it until I make it. I'm still acting, but thank you. As of July, it's official. So thanks for that and having me and the Maryland program here today. I'm fortunate enough to be the spokesperson and the program sponsor for all the talented individuals that are also on the line here from Maryland today. But my partner in crime with making TSMO in the past few years a real success is Subrat Mahapatra, who's also going to help me out here today in case we get close to the 11 o'clock hour. I have another scheduled appearance with AASHTO and our Maryland Transportation Builders Association as well. TSMO is my heart and passion and very near and dear to me. So let's talk about data. I am, like our administrator and Subrat, a data geek, and a little bit about how we operate, need to know a little bit about what we look like. And the Maryland State Highway Administration is 17,000 lane miles and 2,576 bridges. So when you take a look at that, Maryland's a small state. America in a miniature, when you look at how we are in 42nd in size, 6th in density, only 17% of Maryland is 17% of the roadways are the Maryland roadway network of all the roads. 66% carry the volume in Maryland. So actually 17,000 lane miles isn't very much, but we carry 66% of that volume when you take a look at it in the macro. Our organizational structure, you can see at the very bottom, the Office of Transportation, Mobility, and Operations, also formerly for the last 25 years, was known as our CHART program. It aligns laterally with our Office of Traffic and Safety, Materials, Construction, and Maintenance, all core members of our TSMO Executive Committee. And you can see how they align in operations that parallel right next to planning and engineering within our administration and department, which helps make our TSMO program here on our next slide such a success. Because that's what helped us in 2014 to 16 develop the first TSMO strategic plan. And in that plan, focused on those 4 bottom goals: collaboration, systems, data, and our customer experience. We revamped, and because it is a living and breathing document that changes and evolves with us as we roll. And it was rolling really good right before COVID and some of the economic crises that we're in, and we will overcome and adapt. It was revamped in 2019, which is now working in our system of systems approach under now Secretary Slater and Administrator Smith, that ties everything that we've been doing. You see those things to the left of freight management, Road weather management, you see traffic incident management. Now we're sprinkling in freight management, freeway arterial management for the first times. And you start seeing the other things that we've been doing really well, like emergency response and traffic signal coordination and maintenance fleet management. And now we're taking things like connected and automated vehicle technologies and transit priority integration into those things. And those things together with operations planning, taking these performance measures and communicating them, internal as well as outward facing, are really what our systems approach is. So let's take a deeper dive into performance measures real quick. On the demand side, our vehicle miles traveled and congestion is at an all-time high. Well, prior to COVID, at the peak in April, we saw a 51% reduction in traffic. Right now, we're averaging between 16 and 18% reductions as compared to these dates and times last year, same times. Anticipating still yet in long-range planning, Maryland will still have 1 million more people by 2040, resulting in 30% more VMT, especially on our truck side. That freight truck and freight fluidity is going to only continue to increase, as many of your states will also. Our supply side, our system has been and is operating at overcapacity and oversaturation, leading to that higher unreliability on our TTIs. And we have a lot of competing priorities, as many of you experience as well too in your metropolitan regions. It's always a competing priority over safety versus mobility, as well as maintaining your assets within a state of good repair. All of these things are principles that we're putting together that all focus on our complete customer experience. Looking beyond just operations, there's many ways to look at it. We're looking at it multimodal because that's how our department is shaped. Much like the United States Department of Transportation, we have modes. So when we look at performance measures strategically and through tactics and operational decision making, we look at them not just highways and surface transportations. We look at them with our toll facility, surface transportation partners. We look at them with transit, air, our aviation, our ports. We look at them by function, like planning and engineering and operations and maintenance, construction, the DBOM model, if you will. And then we look at them by areas and safety, mobility, asset management, administratively. We start taking a look at performance measurement at the highest levels. Under Secretary Ron, now Secretary Greg Slater, is bringing performance measures across our entire department at the highest levels that are focused on managing for results. We are not talking about what we're gonna do, we're talking about what we're doing and have done to continue. And where we talk today about performance measures, we talk about related to today's conversation. We measure travelers assisted by MDOT, user savings, those times to restore lanes when crashes occur and incidents, time to restore lanes in after weather and snow and ice events. And then we start talking about the VMT, TTI, PTI, truck reliability, and our annual costs of congestion and hours of delay. And we report those out and we talk about how we can do better to go from good to great, if you will. TSMO applications, we start talking about real-time applications, the long-time chart active traffic management software, advanced traffic management software that's out there, and going into the future of active traffic management and integrated corridor management. Legacy incident management program, just this sprinkled right into making us a solid foundation of making TSMO and systems operation a great thing in MDOT for us here. Data, we archive it, we evaluate it, it helps in our decision making. Without data, you're just a person with an opinion, said Edward Demings. Data sources continue to be from our own infrastructure, from private sector, and through crowdsourced data as well. And with the University of Maryland CATT Lab and our RITIS program as well being huge staples and anchors for our success in that performance data collection. I won't go through this whole slide. I know the slide deck will be available and to our 200 plus attendees today for moving forward, but this is a little bit of our outcome measures and what we focus on. User savings at 1.3 to 1.5 billion annually right now. Our chart and TSMO combined, you start looking at those numbers. Our capital projects at 110 million, multimodal strategies at 54. This breaks down all of those pieces there that ultimately show where we reduce our delay, fuel savings, and secondary crash, and environmental reductions such as emissions and fuel reduction stuck in congestion and queued traffic. Having that data is beneficial for having our program funded and continued at a robust level. Performance measures, we continue now to have over more than 600,000 disabled motor assists, over 300,000, these were last year's statistics, 300,000 crashes reported to, and in 2018 we responded to now over 1 million assists, things that we have touched. And when you start breaking that down into micro from the macro big data, think about this. Every 16 minutes in Maryland, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a chart patrol is assisting a motorist. Every 22 minutes in Maryland, there's management of traffic at an incident. That savings is $1.5 billion annually, and 225 to 250 secondary incidents are prevented every year. In my time with the Federal Highway Administration, we also indicated that the average was for every minute you stayed in the lane blocking traffic, it was 2.9% chance you were going to get struck or have a secondary crash. Our key performance indicators do line up, especially with a lot of the federal suggested performance measures. If you don't or didn't have any, we've been fortunate in Maryland that we were cool before it was cool to be cool, and had already started tracking response times and lane clearance times and incident clearance times. But we started adding in a few more things, like the number of events and after action reviews, and being a traffic incident management guy, those are pretty important, and I can't reiterate enough how important those are. Planned metrics, incident verification time for when an incident, for when the actual traffic, ours or your traffic management center becomes aware of an incident and it's confirmed. Time to activate ITS devices, and incident detection time. Our partners at the Maryland Transportation Authority are very focused on those with their infrastructures that are out there and their leadership. Tools for TMC measures in our traffic operations centers, traffic management centers, as well as our authority operations centers. I know that's a lot. We have a lot of structures, a lot of facilities, a lot of roadways. So both of our modals here in Maryland are using these tools for response times, number of events, incident clearance times, and lane clearances. Got a lot of incidents and a lot of data to capture, so we have a lot of operators and a lot of operation centers. Some of the tools you can see here, won't go down through those entirely, but we can do logs and report schedules as well too, so that we can manage these tools and we can take a look at them on a routine and a frequent basis, not just an annual basis. It helps us break some of these things down, as we need to. Especially what's important is for, we can hit mute everybody, please. Especially for an after action. We actually have an after action today of a major event we had late last week in Maryland, and we get to pull all of this data real time, helps tell the story, helps us walk down through it. I'm going to start to talk about some TSMO performance measures, and I'm going to probably be handing it off to Sabrat to help walk you through the final details here in a slide or two. But for TSMO performance measures specifically, I talked about TTI and PTI a little bit. Hey, can you hear me? I can. Yes, I can hear the speaker. I can hear my computer. Okay, thank you. TTI, PTI, so traffic volumes, VMT, and average daily traffic. Delay cost and congestion costs, freight transit, non-motorized travel. We start looking at those trends, and you can tell with our heat maps here, as well as our Gantt charts, we start to show where we can see cause and dependencies in those metrics and where the congestion leads to higher unreliability on our roadways. Some of our other customer experience centric measures, we look at activity zones, such as origin and destination. such as how many jobs in households can be accessed within 30 to 45 minutes of travel, where are our major trip generators, what does that activity look like. Sabrat, are you there with me? How's now to help step us through these next couple of slides here?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
I can, Sabrat. You want to pick up where I left off and help carry us home across the finish line here, especially on these performance measures that are dear to you, sir. Go right ahead.
Sure. Thank you. So, good morning, everyone. Again, Joey covered a lot of ground when it comes to performance management. Again, you could tell that we as an agency are very data-driven, very passionate about performance measures, and more importantly, how they shape our decisions, not only at a day-to-day operations level, but also at a policy-making and strategic level. And one of the things that you would hear more and more is how we are moving along with the congestion reliability metrics that we look at it segment by segment basis in micro detail, but also looking at the overall customer experience, the origin to destination trip, if you may, or the system of systems metrics, if you may. So this is, again, taking that next step in customer experience and tying that into performance management, and that tying into our day-to-day operations. What you would notice here is we are looking at accessibility measures using crowdsourced data, big data, and other avenues. How many jobs can you reach through a multimodal trip, which could be a combination of auto, transit, or walk and bike ped. Also looking at economic centers, centers of activities, if you may, transit-oriented development, smart growth opportunities, things of that nature. But also looking at the reliability metrics, what is the worst case for a commuter trip, for a freight trip, things of that nature. And looking at what the drivers are, whether it's, if you're looking at a truck trip, it's not just a truck. We're looking at what are the commodity implications, what are the supply chain implications, what are the implications to the local, regional, and statewide economy. So we are taking the performance measures into the next level, if you may, and this is where the future is, where you're connecting your traditional incident clearance time to delay metrics, to economic metrics, and making sure that your performance measures are part of a broader ecosystem. So this is, I'll talk briefly about some of the cross-collaboration opportunities as where we are headed internally as an agency, but also taking it to that next level. So what we understand with the TSMO program is a connection of dots. TSMO touches in everything that we do, starting from planning, engineering, operations, construction, maintenance, you name it. So one of the key things is not a program by or a silo by itself, but it touches a lot of things that we do as an agency in different facets of the program areas. So as we look at performance measures, when we look at TSMO statistics and incidents, we are also looking at the synergies and the cross-collaboration opportunities with the safety information because they are kind of tied together. Same deal with asset management activities, whether it's state of good repair activities going on or capital investments going on. We are making sure that these TSMO strategies, and Joey talked about the annual outcome measures where we monetize everything to have that common metric. What does it mean at the end of the day from an annual user savings perspective? Again, this is where you combine all the various factors and have the dollar figure. That way you have a data-driven approach to say where your investments are in a strategic manner. So the next step, again, as you see, there are a lot of moving parts with our own agency data, our private sector partner data, university data, research center data. So what is key to bring method to the madness, if you may, is to have a data governance plan. And this is looking beyond TSMO or the DOT, but looking at multimodal operations and taking a tiered approach. We have developed a data governance plan that shapes our multimodal mobility frameworks and safe TSMO decisions. Now here we are taking a playbook from the capability maturity frameworks where some data sets are more mature for certain activities, some of them are not, but you're constantly trying to make sure that you are enabling the new data sources and the methodologies to give us better decisions. So this is taking TSMO from a vehicular standpoint to multimodal, one MDOT approach. So one of the things, investments what we have made in the last few years has been on developing an MDOT common operating picture. Very proud of the work that we did in collaboration with the University of Maryland CATT lab. And the whole idea is folks who are very familiar with RITIS, think of RITIS as the visualization engine, but you are now bringing in transit data, you are bringing in port data, aviation data, and having a concrete picture of what's going on from a situational awareness standpoint, irrespective whether you are highway mode or you are a transit operator or you are the port administration. We are also looking for digitizing our infrastructure, the SPAT and MAP data for signals, which would be the foundation for operating the next generation of TMCs. The DSRC CD2X, we know that jury is out there, but we are aware that we have to prepare our connected automated transportation future. And again, this goes back to having the common data governance and processes. That way, we are leveraging crowdsourced data for standardizing some of our asset management activities, work zone metrics, and so on. And this is where we have done recently a fair amount of work using crowdsourced data and partnering with Federal Highway to the EDC5 crowdsourcing for operations, but not only looking at crowdsourcing for operations with data sets from Waze and other sources, but also looking at the same crowdsourced features, social media features to better the customer experience, whether it's a customer care tracking system or whether it's providing additional intelligence to the traffic incident management program and ATM ICM applications. I talked briefly about how we are taking steps to go from the origin to destination trip from the customer standpoint, whether you are a truck or whether you are a person going to your job or you're making a recreational trip, and making sure that we align the transportation performance measures with the emerging transportation modes, micromobility, mobility on demand, mobility as a service. Huge opportunity areas, and I don't think anyone has a good handle yet, but I guess as we started in the probe, vehicle probe infrastructure many years back, we are in that same format as how do we take our performance measures into a multimodal setting, but also add emerging transportation modes and for better transportation outcomes. So with that, here is contact for Joey, and yeah, if there are any questions, ideas, we would love to have this dialogue about how do we take our traditional, I would call them traditional performance, TSMO performance measures, and roll them out for a future emerging technology mode. Thank you. Back to you.
Subrat, thank you. Before we go to John, there is one question in the chat box from Alan Ward out of New York. His question is, are you handling disruptive events such as unprecedented changes to transit ridership or traffic levels that have resulted from the pandemic? Does your interpretation process for the measures have flexibility built in, or are there predetermined responses that result when certain levels of measures are present? You see that?
No, I think
question?
That's a great question. So no, it's not predetermined. There are thresholds, but again, in the strange and unusual times that we are in right now, we monitor these performance metrics very closely. What again could not come as a surprise to our coalition partners on this call is we have seen significant traffic drops. At one point in time, we were experiencing 50 to 60% drop in traffic volume. And that translates, and right now we are in a 15 to 20% drop level, constantly monitoring on a week-by-week basis what the demand fluctuations are, how traffic is going back up or not, what does the truck volumes are, and accordingly we are positioning our resources. We have seen some uptick in severe traffic incidents on the roadways because of speeding matters. Some commercial vehicle crashes have taken uptick. So accordingly, more tactical and operational measures are being put in place. So the answer is no, we are using these live systems, looking at the data on a week-by-week basis, looking at after actions and trends to make tactical decisions, and hopefully that saves policy and strategic decisions as well.
Great. Thank you. One more question, Subrat, is Eric Hill is asking you, how are the MPOs integrated with your program? How do they use PMs for TMCs, for TSMO? Have you done that yet?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And again, what we do in TSMO performance management is not simply a MDOT-SHA matter or an MDOT matter. It touches everyone. And so there is close collaboration with the MPOs, with our WASCOG, BMC partners, Hagerstown MPO, Wilmapco, and others. When it comes to the reliability targets, these are the same. These MPOs, our MPO partners, use the same data infrastructure, the RITIS tools, the visualization engines, and everything else. So from a data process and technical tool standpoint, there is common elements there. We are part of the conversations of the technical boards and also some of the task forces that are there. So there is alignment there. And even from a MAP 21 FAST Act, whether it's a urbanized area target setting, safety targets, reliability performance measures targets, those are all vetted together as a team. So there is that close collaboration that brings us together. And the MPOs are a vehicle to that origin to destination trip, right? As Joey was suggesting, we own roughly 15 to 20% of our transportation infrastructure, roadway lane miles wise, and then there is a 70-80% that door-to-door trip. So that's where the common data sets and the processes and the origin to destination trip, and MPOs and our local partners through them are the MPOs are the windows into the local partner world as well.
Great, thank you, Subrat. Nelson, I see there's one more question in the box, but we're going to move on, and I'll come back to that at the end if that's okay. Subrat, thank you for stepping in for Joey, and great presentation on your whole system. Thank you. We are now going to move to John Allen, who is going to talk a little bit about the performance reporting and the templates they're developing. I think the key piece is to look at what they are developing, how they're reporting. I think this is really important. So John, over to you.
Okay, Denise, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Just wanted to say that I hope everybody's doing well, and thoughts and prayers out to the folks today in Texas and Louisiana. Denise invited me here today to talk a little bit about what the CATT Lab and our agency partners are doing with respect to developing some RITIS performance reporting templates using the tools. So I'm going to talk about that today and show you some examples of that. But the first thing I want to do is, so everybody's on the same page with respect to their understanding of RITIS, tell you a little bit about it real quick. So it stands for the Regional Integrated Transportation Information System. It's basically a big data aggregation and dissemination platform that agencies and MPOs, DOTs, and researchers use for situational awareness, data archiving, and deep dive analysis. One of the most popular tool sets in our toolbox is the Pro Data Analytics Suite. We have a lot of users there who do some really fantastic stuff. You'll see some examples of that a little bit later. Thousands of people across the country use the tools, and about 7 years ago, a RITIS user group was formed, starting out as power users of the tools, to share best practices, how they're using the tools and for what purpose, to hear from the CATT Lab about some of the latest features and improvements that we're doing to the tools. And also there was a time where we would set aside to talk about suggested improvements to the tools and ideas for making it better. We're very customer-centric, so all of our improvements are driven by our customers and our partners. If you don't know about RITIS or just heard about it, I highly suggest that you go to the RITIS website, check it out, look at the tool catalog up at the top, and also visit the coalition's website, where they have a British PDA Suite homepage. If you scroll down there, you'll see a number of presentations done over the last 7 years, and has a lot of great use cases and uses of the RITIS tools by agencies. So there's many things that RITIS can help address in terms of TSMO situations and use cases. I'm not going to go over these, but I want to say that we're going to be focusing in on how we are producing some graphics and reports to help your agency or people brief senior leadership, the media, the governor, the general public, or whomever you need to communicate with in an effective manner and get across some complex data in as simple a way as possible. So we are looking at a number of different reporting types. We had developed a few reports in the past and got a lot of positive feedback from agencies that we were very effective in communicating the information, and it saved them a lot of time and effort in putting the information together. So we thought we'd expand that out into this list of 9 different types, and you can see that we have several in the works right now. So I want to step through some of these and talk about them, show you what we're doing, and how they're hopefully going to make folks' lives a lot easier. But the first step was to put together a performance reporting focus group. So we solicited the RITIS user group for some volunteers to help us out in doing that, and we got back a solid group of folks from across the board in terms of working with DOTs and MPOs and in planning and in operations. So we think we have a really great group of folks here who have used the tools for a while now and have developed their own content, and that's really outstanding in its own right. So we think we have a solid team to move forward with making these reports the best that they can be. So now I wanted to get into a couple of report examples that we have for you today. I should say that it's using the RITIS tools through PowerPoint. We find that PowerPoint is one of the most powerful tools that a lot of people know how to use in doing their PowerPoint slides, but you can also do web pages, you can do templates, you can do brochures, and we found this to be the easiest way to facilitate the use of these templates was to use PowerPoint. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was an after-action review report template we put together for this horrendous collision that occurred on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge a couple years ago. And this was a report created based upon MATOC, which is the Metropolitan Area Transportation Operations Coordination Partnership in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, as they reported out on the impacts both to the bridge itself and to the regional impacts of this particular incident. So you can see here there's several tools that we used from RITIS. The most important one for that bridge proper and the site itself was the incident timeline, and the rest of the tools were used for more regional impacts of this bridge closure that occurred. It was a full closure for a while and then a partial closure, but it greatly affected the traffic, as you'll see. So here's some select pages from the template, and let me go through these. The first is kind of like an event summary. So up top, you see the header there with some basic information about the date and time and location, a simple summary of the incident that occurred, a fatality, several people injured, fire. It was a really horrendous situation that closed the bridge for almost 12 hours, and a number of different agencies responded, 17 agencies, 100 plus personnel. It affected the traffic greatly. You could see on I-95 there was queues in the order of about 12 miles typically, and from northbound and 4 miles southbound throughout the day. And there's a simple location map to show you where it was. So we pulled from the incident timeline this event timeline that shows you the agencies that were involved, the number of responders, when they were notified, where you could see the small diamond shapes, the travel times to the site, how long they stayed on the site when they arrived and when they departed. And below that, along the same timeline, is the lane status. So you could see for a while there it was closed fully across the bridge, and then most of the outer loop was closed throughout that time to clear the site. Then we looked at the alternate route impacts from this collision. Obviously, this is the DC area and the Capitol Beltway, so it was extremely busy and crowded. And you can see that by the yellow hours there, there's very many secondary incidents that occurred because of this crash. People are getting confused with where to go. Maybe some people were backing up actually from the bridge to try to avoid getting stuck there. And then we also looked at the alternative route travel time index comparisons of selected roads in the area, and you could see by the numbers there from a 3 up to an 8+ that the roadway itself was greatly affected throughout the entire day from the incident. And then the other impacts we looked at were what MDOT was calling this impact triangle of the most significant routes that were affected. And we looked at a user delay cost comparison of the cost, the hours of delay, and the delay of VMT for the incident day versus a typical Wednesday before and a typical Wednesday after. About 3.5 times normal for this particular incident. And lastly, we looked at the regional impacts at the evening hours to show how extensive this particular incident affected the travel using the trend map. So you can see in a couple of Wednesdays prior to this event, traffic at 8 p.m. was fairly clear and stable, but at that time of the incident, there's still significant regional impact with this particular incident. So next I want to talk about a project assessment report, which is basically a before and after study that the GDOT had created, and they did a really nice job of taking something I did back at my DOT days and making it really an outstanding report. And we took that and offered up a different option for this particular study type, but basically they were taking a route on Peachtree Road, and which is a major commute route in the area, to show what the benefits were of implementing a traffic responsive system that's part of their Regional Traffic Operations Program, or RTOP. So what this looks like is similar in construct a little bit to the previous one in terms of the top banner showing some of the information about the project itself, and then there's a project background, some of the key aspects of the corridor, and talking a little bit about the RTOP program effectiveness with the signal system in place. There's a simple stick diagram showing the corridor and the number of signals there, a little in terms of the RTOP program and how it evolved from the early get-go to deploying this particular signal system, and then a project timeline too. So the flip side of this would be a performance report results from looking at the before and after, which was comparing June of 2017 to June of 2018. So you can see it's broken out into speed, bottlenecks, reliability, and delay costs. And that across the board, there were significant improvements because of the signal system in place. So for example, the speeds were increased generally from 11 to 13%. There's a key intersection that was a bottleneck in the corridor, and that improved dramatically, 25 to 43% with bottleneck lengths and total congestion time respectively. Reliability improved tremendously too. And in terms of the delay costs, hours of delay, the delay for VMT, there was significant improvement there too. Next, we're going to talk about a holiday travel guide that we created quite a few years ago, but it gets a lot of play because it's a very simple graphic that agencies like to either post on their website or share with the local media in telling them some travel situations in a particular region or location during holidays. In this example, you'll see that it was for the Thanksgiving week in 2016 in the Baltimore area. And we created this graphic showing the week of Thanksgiving. And for each day of that week, we created the network. We analyzed it using the tools in the previous slide and then summarize those to get this kind of information onto the graphic. And it's really simple to understand, and it highlights, for example, key time periods to avoid driving or to drive carefully because there's a number of collisions that typically are higher on these particular days than the norm. So this has been very effective for a number of different agencies in communicating travel advisories prior to a holiday travel. And this last slide and report is a work zone impact summary report. This is basically using the work zone dashboard of the RITIS platform that has a number of different aspects to it that you can manage vehicle probe data and active work zone information in a dashboard style. So there's real-time information there as well as some archive data for the past 7 days. And it breaks out into two separate dashboards. One is a regional dashboard, and the number is an individual work zone profile dashboard. So we use that second dashboard to create this work zone impact weather infographic style for a project of rehabilitating the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel, part of the I-895 Big Time Roadwork project. So we thought it might be best, since the data is archived in 7-day slugs, to lay out this table and this graphic in a weather forecast style format that shows Sunday through Saturday on the one axis and then performance measures down the other side. So you can see by day, you can look at longest backup or the longest travel time, what the delay costs were, or hours of delay. And then just a simple highlight bar showing the worst performers for the week at those locations. And then on the other page, we looked at performance trends comparing the week before to this particular week, which shows changes in speed, travel time, max queue length, etc. Trying to make it very simple so people can understand it at whatever audience you're dealing with, and it's effectively communicating some of your information. One of the things we want to do in addition to handing out these templates to folks is to provide two other supplements. One is a how-to guide. For each template, we want to put together these guides that not only show you how to use the RITIS tools to get the information and to put it into a report format, but to also use how we use PowerPoint to derive some of the looks and the feels of the documents themselves. And then secondly, we are adding these things we call design sheets, which have fully editable graphics that we use in these different reports, plus a number of different icons you could use. So you can take these and change them and alter them in any way that you want to fit your report style. And it just saves you some time and effort. So some of the considerations we have moving forward when we talked about our reports at the last meeting was these two things. There's many more, but I wanted to point these out. One was we want to provide folks with some layout and content options, because as we went through these different reports, we had a number of different options or versions of them, and some folks would like parts of one or parts of another. So we want to put them all out there eventually, because they may speak to you or be more useful to you if you would pick and choose from these two things and combine it into a report and make it your own. And then the second thing we want to do too is to create a single page infographic style, which you can see here was produced by GDOT for that RTOP project I talked about before on Peachtree Road. They did a terrific job of taking all the information in that particular report and distilling it down into this very simple and easy to understand graphic. And we want to do the same thing too, that would be very handy for you to hand out to your senior leadership or at public meetings or a legislator, things like that. In terms of next steps, we're going to have another meeting in a few weeks of the focus group, and a few of the members had said they were going to test drive some of these templates, see how they work in real world conditions for them. And then we're going to also take a number of the comments they made during the last meeting upgrade and revise the other reports and talk about those, and then develop the final draft product that we'll review again and then start distributing out to the RIS users. And once we do that and get that out there, we want to start developing some of the other reports that you saw on the previous list there, like the top 10, whatever, bottlenecks or incident locations, quarterly reports, things like that. But ultimately, our goal is to have RIS auto-generate those reports. So it'd be a 1, 2, 3 kind of process whereby you basically choose a template, develop your query. If you're not familiar with RIS, there's query pages where it's a lot of checkboxes or selections. It's very simple. And then press a button and out. And our vision for what we want to do with performance reporting using RIS. And that's all I have. The time back to you.
John, thank you. There are a couple questions in the chat box that you might want to take a look. Alan Ward has one asking who's responsible for inputting data into the event summary, and is there a QC/QA process for the data? And then he asks, does the input data process promote consistent data definitions between users or between different DOT districts? That's the first question.
Okay. For the event summary, I guess that's the after action review one we saw in the beginning. So a lot of that information comes from the traffic operations centers themselves. You saw the incident timeline there, and we get feeds directly from the TOCs, and as well as logs and operator logs and things like that. So we get that information from them directly. Some of the information, for example, congestion speeds, things like that, are from probe data. But there's other aspects of the incident timeline, for example, messages on overhead signs that are posted under the timeline so you can see the sign changes as time goes on throughout the particular incident. That's all provided by the agency. Does that answer the question?
We'll see if Alan. There's another one from Brett.
Okay, what is the level of effort to generate an AAR, and what is your trigger for an AAR? The level of effort to do something like that, now it's hard to say exactly because this is a building stage, but once we have a template like this involved, that finished, and you do a report using RIS, I would say it would probably take just a few days to put everything together, maybe less, depending on your familiarity with the tools and with PowerPoint. So it's a very effective way to put the information together. Thanks for the compliment, by the way. But for example, generating a timeline, which we drew a lot of the information from, it's really a couple of clicks to get to the date and the location of the incident. And then once you do, it takes, I don't know, 10 seconds maybe to generate a full report of the area. And then you click on that particular location of the incident, and it instantaneously generates the timeline. And then from that, you can pull all your information. And along with the timeline comes operator notes and some other information related to the responders. So in Excel type format. So when you pull all that information together, then it's a matter of just plugging it into the template. So I'm thinking a few days for folks.
Okay.
And
John,
Eric asked, are the supplement guides on the website? Not yet. We're still in the process of reviewing those and fine-tuning those. We went through a number of different versions of the guides, but we think we finally have one that works for everybody. And it's only for one right now, so we need to create that particular format and look for the rest of the reports, which we'll be doing over the next several weeks or months.
Great. Well, John, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great job. And please don't hesitate to, if you want to put some questions in the chat box and we can't get to them during the time frame, we do send them out to the speakers and ask them to respond, and then we will send out a Q&A. So thank you, John. It was great.
Yeah,
So
sure. Denise, I just
right.
wanted to say real quick, if folks have questions or they want to talk to me directly about these things, you have my contact information. I'd be happy to take on any questions or discuss these things with you at length.
That's great. Great. Thanks, John. Awesome. All right. And now for the third presentation, I'd like to turn this over to Tom Edinger. He's going to talk about the work that they do at DVRPC in the region, around the Philadelphia region, and how they are using or developing their congestion management process. So, Tom, with that being said, take it away.
Okay, Denise, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, yep, so my name's Tom Edinger, Manager of Congestion Management Programs at DVRPC. And I'm going to talk about developing and managing the DVRPC congestion management process, talking about TSMO and other performance measures. So in case you're not familiar with the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission region, it includes 5 counties in Pennsylvania, 4 counties in New Jersey. It's a little bit over 5.7 million people in the greater Philadelphia metro region. And as you can see, it's a fairly extensive roadway and rail network. So I'm going to talk about what is the CMP, what is it, roadway and other networks in the CMP, congestion reliability and other CMP objective measures. To drill down a little bit, we'll talk about focused roadway corridor and intersection bottleneck, delayed performance measures. Talk a little bit about non-recurring congestion, how we're using that, strategies to mitigate congestion, and really, most importantly, putting the CMP into action to use it for day-to-day work. So what is the CMP? We just completed a new update at the end of 2019. So it's an ongoing systematic program to improve the flow of people and goods. And the key thing here, it's ongoing. So we just don't develop this plan, process, document, and put it away and then look at it another 3 or 4 years. Where constantly things have changed. Obviously, when we develop these plan and reports, the data is a little bit old, so we want to make sure that we're constantly looking at updated data. So it's ongoing. Systematic program, there's a structured approach to the CMP process. And the key thing here is it analyzes the regional transportation network to identify and then prioritize these congested locations. Recognizes the causes, non-recurring, recurring, developing multimodal strategies to mitigate, and then importantly evaluate the effectiveness of implemented improvements given certain strategies and see how we're doing better or worse at travel time, hopefully better. And then ultimately it's a requirement of the federal surface transportation legislation. We would be doing it anyway, but that's also part of the CMP process. So what's DVRPC's perspective on the CMP? Well, we call it a medium-term planning effort. It's not long range, 30 to 35 years. It's not short range necessarily, like 4 years. It's kind of in between. So we coordinate with the long range plan as well as the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, financially constrained plan. And then we also coordinate with the Transportation Operations Master Plan, which is the Transportation Operations Department within the DVRPC. So just really in a nutshell, how do we integrate the CMP to the transportation planning process? Really, there's a planning level right here. So this is kind of a planning level that we would use there, all the way from advancing long-range plan goals to recommendations for implementation of certain projects. And all these steps are kind of coordinated through an advisory committee, CMP advisory committee, which we meet as part of the plan update. And then also there's a kind of a CMP project level. So for certain projects where we're adding capacity, if that's needed, then we want to make sure we have supplemental projects that are also help manage congestion. So TSMO strategies is right up there, biking, walking, transit, those kind of things. So we want to work, the CMP is involved in that process. And then really the other process is evaluation. When as mentioned, when these projects are completed, we want to do before-after studies to make sure that travel times have improved and what strategies are best for certain locations. All right, so the CMP roadway and other networks used. So essentially, we're using roadways on the national highway system. We wanted to include arterial roadways not included on the NHS. Freight network, including last mile roads that may not be included in the first two. And distinguish between, as part of this limited access, non-limited access roadways, because congestion is different for each one of those particular processes. And then transit, we want to consider passenger rail, bus transit network in the congestion analysis process. Data sources, NPM-RDS, we talked about that a little bit earlier, the FHWA TM3 measures. We use that. INRIX TMC network, which is a little bit more granular and better coverage. INRIX XD, even more so, which I highlight that. That's the one that we're really using for the CMP. And then a number of other DVRPC layers for performance measures. So just want to give you a quick snapshot of the NPM-RDS roadway network. Obviously, there's a little over 7,000 segments. And this is originating from really the DOTs, but managed by FHWA for performance measures. So the advantage of this is that there's HPMS data tagged with these roadways, so we can look at volumes. The disadvantage may be that it's not as an extensive roadway coverage that we may want, or not as granular. Then we look at the INRIX TMC roadway network, about double the amount of roadways, a lot more coverage compared to the NPM-RDS, which is good. But one of the disadvantages, there's no HPMS data tied to it. So then we have to conflate data to that traffic volumes. And also it's a little more granular network, obviously, compared to the TC. And ultimately, the INRIX XD roadway network is 3 times as many segments as the TMC network. So there's a little bit more coverage, but more importantly, it's more granular, so that we can look at congestion in particular locations along a corridor, not just the beginning and end of it as part of that process. So the advantage is we have more coverage, more granular, but there's bigger data, right? So we have more data to work with. So just to give an example here, this is the TMC roadway network and a portion of Mercer County, New Jersey. So the brown is the roadways, the blue are basically endpoints or begin points of the roads, and this is the INRIX XD network, right? It's more granular and it's more coverage compared to the TMC network. So this provides us capabilities to do kind of drill down a little bit further in congestion. So what we do is we have a number of CMP objectives that are worked on with our CMP advisory committee. We translate those into performance measures and then update those on the roadway network. So I'm going to go over these on a map basis here real quick, but as you can see here, minimize growth, recurrent congestion, improve reliability, improve accessibility, maintain the core transportation network, improve safety, maintain movement of goods by truck, improve security of the transportation system, integrate the TPM, PM3 measures, and support long-range plan principles, and land use principles and other principles. So here's CMP objective measure, reducing recurrent congestion. So it's essentially taking, using INRIX XD data, the average observed travel time, right, divided by the free flow travel time. And anything greater than 1.5, it would be in red, and then ones less, which would be congested railways, a little less than that are in orange. We'll go through these pretty quickly. And that's look at the peak periods, AM or PM. Now here we're looking at reducing anticipated congestion and growth. So we're looking at the travel demand model for the DVRPC region, and the kind of measure there is VC-based, volume capacity or of level of service. So we're looking at orange areas in red are where we have a 3% change between the base year, it was 2015, and the out year 2045, and there's moderate congestion there already. Areas in orange where we just have a 30% change. So, looking at this, a lot of it's driven by where we anticipate population employment, and it would be in this case in Chester County, Pennsylvania, and Gloucester County, New Jersey, for example, are areas that show up fairly extensively. We want to improve travel time reliability, so we look at the planning time index, 95th percentile travel time divided by free flow travel time. So areas in red are greater than 3.0, most congested or most reliable. Areas in orange, less so. We want to increase accessibility. So we look at really kind of 2 factors here, where we have high population densities, employment densities, and low income, which are areas in the dark green, and we tag those roads would be included in the analysis. And then areas that are nearby passenger rail stations, we include those as well and tag those roads, which are roads there are in red. We want to rebuild and maintain infrastructure, maintain the core infrastructure. So we look at roadways on the national highway system, We also want to include roads that are in what we call freight centers or within a mile of freight centers and freight facilities. So those kind of roads are tagged in red there. We want to rebuild and maintain infrastructure considering transit. So we look for any roadways where we have existing bus transit or roads nearby passenger rail transit are included in that analysis and tagged. We want to create a safer transportation system. That was mentioned in a couple of the other presentations, along with mitigating congestion. So we look at really two factors here, high crash frequency and high crash severity. Crash frequency is based upon a crash rate or million vehicle miles traveled, basically getting an actual rate compared to an observed rate for a given segment, looking at the difference. And then high crash severity, that's in red, by the way. In orange is the crash severity, looking at kills or major injuries per mile of roadway. So where they overlap or where one or the other exists, those potential areas we want to look at congestion in those particular areas. Facilitate goods movement. So here we use the RIS, mentioned earlier, RIS P-Day Suite, truck travel time index to calculate using the TMC data, interstate and non-interstate roadways, looking at reliability along the truck travel time index, basically congestion along roadways. So anything in red is greater than 3, and then less than that would be orange. We also want to consider secure transportation system. So we look for roadways that are nearby bridges that carry 100,000 ADT or roads nearby rail bridges. Also, we look at roads near military sites. And also the green area shows a nuclear power plant. So we look, there's an emergency planning zone there. So we want to consider that, any roads nearby that emergency planning zone as areas we want to look at for managing congestion, keep that congestion free as much as possible. And then going along with that as well, areas of special evacuation, other than the evacuation, the emergency zone for the power plant, there is areas where we have high population employment and areas where we have waterfront attractions, which are in red, and then high employment population densities are in blue. Also support long-range plan principles. So when we look at roadways where they don't have much of environmental impact, and using that analysis based on a low green infrastructure screening tool that was developed. So basically roads in red have low environmental impact. And we want to look at and give priority to roads that support long-range plan principles in infill redevelopment areas and emerging growth areas. So those roads are in blue. And also support long-range plan principles in regards to land use centers. So areas in boroughs and towns we want to give weight to because people live and play in those areas and want to keep those congestion-free as possible. Then integrate the PM3 measures, the level of travel time reliability. A lot of us are familiar with that, but we're just looking at ones that have high unreliable, taking the average travel time divided by 50% travel time divided by the, the 80th percentile travel time divided by the 50th percentile travel time, and look at the highest value for the different peak periods. And basically areas that are in red are the most reliable, areas in orange less so. Also looking at the truck travel time reliability, and this is for the interstate that was mentioned earlier. Areas in red are the most unreliable, and orange less so. And then finally, the peak hour excessive delay measure. And this is a little unique in that it doesn't cover each of the counties. It just covers within the urbanized area, which is in purple. So it doesn't. It's a little biased to those particular areas, but areas in red have a high excessive delay. Realizing some delay is okay, could be okay, but excessive delay is what this measure is looking at. And in orange, it would be less so. So what we do is basically to the left here in bold, we have the CMP objectives, and then to the right, these CMP objective measures that I talked about. And so really the way the roads with more CMP objectives than others receive a higher priority for managing congestion. And that's what's really shown on this map here, kind of a composite mapping. So areas in browns or the reds are areas where they receive the most points, given what was looked at earlier. And everything being, we want to manage congestion in those areas first as a priority. So we looked at this at kind of the segment level. We also want to drill down and look at at a corridor level. so we can develop a number of strategies along the corridor. So we really use two different performance measures for this. One is vehicle delay, which is essentially taking the calculated peak period observed travel time minus the free flow travel time. So that would be vehicle delay. And then volume delay, we're looking at essentially that vehicle delay as a function of traffic volumes. So one of the big processes here was to, as a lot of us have done or know about, is conflating HPMS data to the another data set, in this case INRIX XD data, so that we could come up with this volume delay. And we want to analyze these for both travel time and planning times. So this is just a slide here showing the focus roadway corridors. There's 267 in the region. You know, some are longer, some are shorter. They're broken up by you know, limited access, non-limited access, major interchanges, urban and rural. A number of factors that go into, you know, the extent of those. And the key thing is these measures are normalized by the length of the roadway, so that we can manage that and compare apples to apples. So what I'm showing here is basically just a, there we go, just showing you a slide of the data behind these CMP corridors. So there's unique identifier, map ID, the particular roadway or route, the from limit, to limit, number of miles, whether it's limited access or not, where it's located with county, municipality. And really it's broken up into basically peak hour vehicle delay or peak hour volume delay. So we list the AM or PM delay, whichever is greater gets in the peak delay, and is it AM or the PM, and then we rank that. This particular chart is ranked by volume delay. So in the volume delay part, we have the AVT, the volume, the AM volume delay, PM volume delay, whichever is greater, and then kind of listed here with its AM or PM. And then we break it, we look at the hours, minutes, seconds, and we just take these values here, convert to hours, minutes, seconds, so it's easier to understand and look at. So this is ranked from top to bottom, 1 being the most congested in that order. And then we want to map that, look at by, this is mapped by quartile. So essentially areas most delayed are in brown, the least delayed is in yellow. We kind of identify which areas are most congested. This is for peak hour volume delay. We also did a vehicle delay map as well. This is a sheet that shows basically the most congested corridors using both vehicle delay and volume delay, which ones really rose to the top where they were high in both categories. So this is kind of an information sheet, not as illustrative as John's with the infographics and reports. Certainly we could take advantage of that, but this essentially is listing the basically a summary of the conditions along that roadway. This happens to be the Vine Street Expressway, a very busy corridor. Some improvements, or maybe they're scheduled on the tip or the long-range plan. Very appropriate strategies that were agreed upon or talked about with the CMP Advisory Committee. You know, ITS, Integrated Corridor Management, for example. Some congestion measures here, and then additional factors to consider. There's park and ride there, is there transit, those kind of things. We also wanted to look at intersection bottlenecks, so not just corridors. Certainly, we actually identified how many intersection bottlenecks were along corridors, but we wanted, sometimes there could be, you know, one corridor could have just really one intersection bottleneck, but it's not high in congestion overall. So we looked at the INRIX segments, ones with a TTI of greater than 2.5. Then we looked at ones that were just on non-limited access roadways, essentially kind of arterials, and those areas where you're stop control, mostly signalized intersections. Identify all direction approaches to the intersection, and then any trailing segments that had a TTI of 1.4 or greater, we accumulated that delay, vehicle delay and volume delay. So we came out with about 190 bottleneck intersections through this analysis, intersection bottlenecks, looking at both vehicle delay, volume delay, again mapped in quartiles from the most to least delayed, from browns to yellows. And again, another information sheet showing the top ones of both vehicle and volume delay, with some information here describing the location, as well as any improvements in that particular intersection, very appropriate strategies, et cetera. We also want to look at the recurring congestion. So essentially, you know, bottleneck, the non-recurring congestion, which is about 55%. This is an old, obviously, pie chart for FHWA. I know there's more recent pie charts developed, and this shows crashes, disabled vehicles, work zones, etc. This is a map showing the incidents, about 15,000 in the Pennsylvania portion of the region for 2019. So how do we actually try to make sense of this? One way is we can do a hotspot mapping to look at where the clusters of incidents are. And we've done this by, I should probably say event here, but we've broken the events down to different types of traffic incidents, adverse weather, to really pinpoint exactly what's going on. We've also looked at duration. So you can have a lot of incidents, right, but they're short duration. So how long is that duration occurring? What's the clearance time? And mapping those both based upon the cluster of incidents and the duration. And then we want to aggregate that to the CMP corridor, so now we can compare recurring to non-recurring congestion. So, you know, all this work, we want to identify strategies to mitigate congestion. So we have a number, 100+ strategies. We identify those for these most congested roadway corridors, intersections, and also what we call these corridor, sub-corridor areas. And, you know, we break down these strategies really into 5 different groups. A lot of us are familiar with those: TSMO, ITF, TDM, you know, complete streets, policy approaches, public transit, goods movement, road improvements, and new roads. And then we drill down even further. In TSMO and ITS, we have, you know, a lot of us work in this field, so we know all these particular strategies and what fits for what particular area. That's the challenge, right? So how to put the CMP into action? You know, obviously the first part here is to help identify and prioritize locations and manage congestion. That's first and foremost. But, you know, we have this CMP, the data is from 2017. We want to monitor data moving forward. So we use other platforms like the RIDIS PDA suite, Transcom's RIMUS software to trend performance measure speeds, congestion, create dashboards to monitor traffic trends. And ultimately what we want to do is keep on evaluating the effectiveness of these implemented TSMO strategies improvements so that we know how they work and keep on making these improvements. This is another slide from the RIDIS PDA suite showing all the CMP corridors, 276, actually double that times 2, were updated into the software so we can look at them by direction. And with that, we can generate different performance measures. So it was talked about earlier that part of the COVID-19 impact, what effects on travel trends. So we looked at speed profiles on this one roadway in Chester County, Pennsylvania. And as you can see here, during January and February, normal conditions, right? And then in March, the first 2 weeks were normal conditions. The remaining weeks were free flow speed, right? In April, May, June, and July, it really stayed that way. So either people are continually working from home or not working, but we want to try to understand these trends better. What we really need, right, is traffic volume data too for all these roads on a continual basis, so we can understand if people are traveling at different times throughout the day rather than just during the AM period. Excuse me. Here's another speed profile. Each corridor is a little different. This is the Vine Street Expressway, the very busy corridor. You can see here in this instance, the first 2 months were reduced speeds during the AM and PM. Again, the first 2 weeks of March, the same, and then after that, free flow speeds through April, and then coming back to normal conditions. Right, so all these corridors operate a little differently. We want to track that, understand that better. Some corridors don't even change at all. This is data in the RIDIS PDA suite with a dashboard, kind of organized by corridor and sub-corridor area in our CMP, so we can kind of digest all this data a little bit. And we look for, right, this is looking at current speeds, historical speeds, and current travel times, historic travel times. And we can look at this, and if one area is constantly, for example, down in the lower right, brown with 17 minutes of extra delay in travel time, then we can, if that happens all the time, then that can help us understand maybe it's not just an incident, but a real issue. This is actually another software, Transcom RIMUS, showing these corridors in the CMP. And if you click on a particular segment there, then you get a map showing where that corridor is. This is actually some reliability planning time index data, which is useful. And we could click on one of these in yellow here to look at incidents along that corridor or another travel time graph. It shows an incident along that corridor where there's congestion, so that's the reason why it's congested there. And then we can look at a travel time graph with the software. Basically, the green here is kind of historical travel time. Because of that incident, then you got a lot of travel time along that corridor. And this kind of just shows the buffer time index as part of that. And then finally, to evaluate the effectiveness of the TSMO improvements, this is a slide from Transportation Operations Group showing working with a consultant to look at a TSMO project that was completed, signal retiming. And as you can see here in the map shows the corridor with the different signals along here. And this chart here shows the existing travel time and speeds and then delay, and then implemented travel time, speeds and delay, and then what's the difference. So moving forward, what we want to do is essentially automate the process of creating these performance charts and travel speed, trend speeds. We certainly can do that with the RIDGIS PDA suite and the Transcom's RIMES, but we actually want to try to do it for all corridors at once and have a nice corridor report. So we're trying to maybe use the RIDGIS API interface and some other scripting to do that. Continually analyze traffic incidents, right, to better understand or traffic events, to better identify issue areas for non-recurring congestion. Work with our DVRPC long-range plan and TIP staff, our planning partners, PennDOT, NJDOT, all our partners to help, to develop and identify the best projects to manage congestion, and then essentially, prepare a batch of projects, TSMO projects, managed before and before after travel time analysis to better understand effectiveness of the implemented strategies. So I went a little bit over, but not much. And so any questions, comments, I'd be appreciated. There's a CMP plan document and the CMP web link are available down below.
Tom, thank you. I think that was amazing. That was, wow. I think you're seeing that in the chat box. I know we're short on, we have about 4 minutes left, but 2 quick questions. One of them is, what is the relationship of the map ID in your slide with TMCs? And
right.
And then
the map ID is an internal identifier for the focus roadway corridors. So the TMC, the traffic message channel, is part of the TMC database.
Okay. And lastly, the last question, Kelly Wells had, did you do all of this in-house, or did you cheat and have?
We did all of it in-house. Obviously, we borrowed the INRIX XD data, the TMC data, PMRS, that all was available to us. But yes, we did that all in-house. Different departments helped out. Travel demand modeling, safety, operations helped us out on that. But certainly we could always look at have more suggestions on how to do it better. It would be nice.
Well, listen, Tom, just for everyone on the call, as Tom noted, the plan document and the web link are right there. We will it'll also be on the presentations when we send it out. But there's some great information in there, Tom. Thank you very much. I think with that being said, I think that just a couple of quick wrap-ups is that the chat box will have a Q&A in it. So for those of you, if I missed a question or we will send that out, as I mentioned, to the presenters to respond. You will then be getting an email. The email should have the Q&A as an attachment, I believe, and the link to the presentation on our website. Please feel free to contact any of the presenters on that were on the webinar today. I think they all 3 did an amazing job. Joey Sabrat, John, Tom, thank you. Again, as I mentioned, performance measures is a perennial topic, and every year we seem to get better and better with some of these showcase presentations. Thanks for joining us today. I think we're right on schedule. Here's my contact information. Please feel free to shoot me an email if you want some more information about this. And with that being said, Joanna, do you have anything else or add?
No, I think we're good. We're good. As you said, everybody will get links to this information, and thank you again to the speakers for doing a wonderful job. Really appreciate it.
Great job, guys. Thank you. Everyone, have a nice day. Take care. Bye now.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.